Mary's just been in touch, saying, I think it's disgraceful dragging Diana up again. It's about viewing figures and therefore money. Absolutely disgraceful, says Mary. Some people have no morals. What do you think?
Well, I think that Mary is quite entitled to her opinion, and that's what she feels. I feel rather... Well, I sympathise with her and I know what she means, but you're not going to crush the memory of Diana just because you may not think it's morally right. People talk about her all the time. People write about her and people make films about her. In a way, I think it's quite nice for her family and her friends, and especially her sons, to know that people still love and care about her. As for the money-making side of it, sadly for Diana, people have always made money out of her, and that was one of her gripes. Again, they're making money out of me. They never leave me alone. But she is just one of those iconic people. I don't think she will ever be left alone.
But she was upset at the time she made these tapes, and frankly, to a certain extent, she may not have known the real truth behind some of the breakdown details of her marriage. So is it fair, Di, that even if it comes out of her own mouth, is it fair to just keep publicising it?
No, I don't think it is, and I'm afraid to say I disagree with your other contributor. I really think time is enough now. It's nearly 30 years, and this programme is designed to go out in next year, the 30th anniversary of her tragic death. I totally agree what you just said. Did she really know what was going to happen with all these tapes? I think it is time that we let her rest in peace. People like Andrew Morton and others have made a huge amount of money out of publicising some of the tragic details of her life. She was a lovely, lovely lady, but she was troubled, and I think she was troubled at the time she was making this. So actually now to disclose this, I think is totally unfair.
I mean, Ingrid, I know it's difficult for you at the moment because the programme makers have asked you not to tell us what the detail of these unheard tapes are. But isn't that true, that at the time she was upset and she wasn't in full possession of the true facts as we know them now? In fact, she was deliberately misguided, I think, or misinformed in some ways. So is it fair to her memory, even though I know that you revere her memory, as so many people do, is it fair to hear her now?
Well, I don't think life is fair. I don't think it's very fair that they were ever broadcast in the first place. But Diana knew, because she was very canny, she knew that once she had made those tapes, that they were never going to go away. I mean, she probably didn't look that far into the future because, she, as Di said, she was very troubled. But she made the tapes because she wanted her voice to be heard. And now, 30 years later, her voice is still being heard. I know, various things have happened that she might look upon it very differently. But of course, you would look upon something very differently with the benefit of hindsight. So I think I don't think there's any way of stopping this exploitation, if you like, of Diana, because it's always happened and it always will do. I mean, she was always so many covers of Majesty magazine. She was on the front. She was on the front of every newspaper. It's something that it's a roller coaster that I don't think you can ever stop. So I think the best thing is to, appreciate what is out there and what is coming out there and go with it.
Final thought, Di, from you, because of all the messages you've got coming in so far are saying, no, just let her rest in peace. And I wonder if is that a sense that, because partly what she's going to be talking about, we know, is Camilla, who is now our queen, and attitudes towards her have changed. And I just wonder, is it damaging to the king and queen for all this to come out now?
Well, you just raised what I was thinking as you actually said it. So, no, I totally agree with you. And in fairness, he is our king now. He hasn't got a right of reply. Camilla hasn't got a right of reply. So I think this is totally unfair if we're going to be fair about anyone and everybody. There are always two two sides to a story, and I think we have to respect not only the King and our now Queen, but also Prince William and his family. I really think this is appalling, and the more I'm listening to everyone, I think it's even more appalling, and I'm dead against it. And if I could do anything to stop it, I would.
Let's be honest for a second. If everything was truly fine inside the royal family, if the narrative we've been fed for decades was completely solid, then why does the mere mention of Princess Diana's voice, her own words, still send shockwaves through the palace and the media machine? Why does it still make people uncomfortable? Why does it still spark debates like the one we just saw on GB News, where suddenly the conversation shifts from truth to morality, from listening to silencing? Because deep down, they know something. And today, we're going to break it all down. So here's what's happening. There's renewed attention around Diana, specifically her recorded tapes, her words, her truth. And almost immediately we start hearing the same familiar lines. Let her rest in peace. It's about money. It's disrespectful. Now, on the surface, that might sound reasonable, even compassionate. But let's scratch beneath that surface, because if this was truly about protecting Diana's memory, then why has the royal family and the UK media spent decades profiting off her image, her story, her tragedy? Why is it suddenly a problem when her voice comes back into the conversation? That's where things stop adding up. Notice the pattern. When newspapers run headlines about Diana, no problem. When documentaries are made framing the monarchy in a favourable light, no outrage. When royal insiders leak stories that benefit the institution, silence. But the moment Diana speaks for herself, suddenly it's too much, too soon, too unfair. Too unfair. To who? Because let's be very clear, Diana didn't record those tapes by accident. She wasn't confused about what she was doing. She was a woman who had been silenced, sidelined, and systematically undermined, and she wanted her truth documented. Not filtered, not rewritten, not interpreted, documented. What we're actually witnessing isn't concern, it's control slipping. For years, the royal family and the media ecosystem surrounding it has had a tight grip on the narrative. Carefully curated images, carefully timed statements, carefully managed scandals. But Diana was never easy to control. Even in life, she disrupted the system. And now, decades later, her voice still has the power to do the same. Because her story doesn't fit neatly into the polished, PR-friendly version of royal life. It exposes cracks, it raises uncomfortable questions, and most importantly, it reminds people that behind the glamour, there was real pain. One of the biggest arguments we hear is, "It's been nearly 30 years. Let her rest." And again, that sounds compassionate. But let's flip that perspective. If Diana's story still resonates nearly 30 years later, maybe that says less about refusing to move on, and more about the fact that her story was never fully acknowledged in the first place. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Closure requires honesty. And honesty has never been the monarchy's strongest suit. So when people say, "let her rest," what they're often really saying is, let's stop asking questions. Another point raised in the discussion was that it's unfair because King Charles and Queen Camilla don't have a right of reply. But here's where that argument falls apart. For decades, there has been a right of reply. Through books, through interviews, through carefully planted media narratives. The royal family has had one of the most powerful communication machines in the world at its disposal. Diana? She had tapes, private recordings, her own words. So framing this as some kind of imbalance now feels less like fairness and more like deflection. let's not ignore the role of the UK media here, because they're not just observers, they're participants. They've built entire industries around royal coverage. They've profited from Diana's life and her death. And yet now they want to position themselves as protectors of her legacy. That's a tough sell, especially when the same outlets that claim to want respect have spent years dissecting every detail of Harry and Meghan's lives with zero restraint. So the question becomes, who gets protected and who gets exposed, and why? This is where things get even more interesting, because the resurgence of Diana's voice doesn't exist in a vacuum. It connects directly to the present, to Prince Harry and Meghan. Harry has been very clear about one thing. History is repeating itself. The same media tactics, the same institutional silence, the same lack of protection. So when Diana's words resurface, they don't just tell a story about the past. They validate concerns about the present. And that's where the real discomfort lies, because it becomes harder to dismiss Harry and Meghan when the past starts echoing so loudly. Another narrative pushed in the segment is that Diana was troubled, implying that her words might not be entirely reliable. And this is a classic tactic. Discredit the messenger, undermine the voice, create doubt. But let's think about this logically. Was Diana going through a difficult time? Yes. Did she experience emotional distress? Absolutely. But does that automatically invalidate her experiences? Or does it actually highlight the environment she was in? Because people don't become troubled in a vacuum. There are causes, there are pressures, there are systems that contribute to that state. So instead of dismissing her words, maybe we should be asking, what led her there? One point from the discussion that is true is this. Diana has always been monetized. Books, films, magazines, you name it. But here's the difference. When others tell her story, it's tribute. When her own voice tells it, it's exploitation. That contradiction says everything. Because it's not about money. It's about control. So why is this coming up again now? Why does it feel like there's a renewed urgency to shut it down? Because the context has changed. Public perception of the monarchy isn't what it used to be. People are asking more questions. They're less willing to accept polished narratives at face value. And they're more open to hearing alternative perspectives. Diana's voice fits into that shift perfectly. It's raw, it's human, it's unfiltered. And in an era where authenticity matters more than ever, that's powerful. At its core, this isn't just about Diana. It's about who gets to tell the story, who controls the narrative, and whose voices are considered appropriate to hear. Because once you start questioning one part of the system, it becomes easier to question the rest. And that's what makes this so uncomfortable for those at the top. Here's the reality. Time doesn't erase truth. It doesn't make it irrelevant. If anything, time gives us distance, perspective, clarity. So the idea that Diana's voice should be silenced because it's been long enough doesn't really hold up. Because truth isn't bound by timelines. And if her words still resonate today, maybe that's because they still matter. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Diana's voice should still be heard today, or do you think it's time to move on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this. And if you're tired of the one-sided narratives, if you want content that actually challenges the status quo and digs deeper into these stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because we're just getting started.